Instruments from the collection is describing the fact that Colonial Williamsburg has a wide collection of musical instruments. And the stringed instruments that are involved in the concert are not put in front of the public at all during the year. So when we bring them out to play them for this series, that's their one opportunity to get to see and hear these instruments being played.
These instruments actually came into our collection in the 1960s and were acquired to be played. They were acquired and actually assigned to musicians that played in the historic area. I've found records that they were in the With House and in the Palace and used by our musicians routinely.
I usually meet with Jenny, who's, one of our wonderful violinists here, and she will come into storage with me and we will go and select instruments together. She will play them right in front of me, kind of test them out together, let me know what kind of condition the strings are in. Do they need to be replaced? Do we need to adjust sound posts?
They're rehearsed on for a good month or two prior to the concert so that the musicians reacquaint themselves with using them. And we will put on new gut strings, we will get them ready to play. They go out for those few concerts and then they go back into protective storage. And soon they may go on display in an exhibit that we have coming up about music in people's lives in the 18th century.
I think it's very nice to be able to bring them out and play them. Any museum that has stringed instruments, it's important that they be played because they represent objects of beauty, but they also represent, centuries of music that was played on these instruments.
As a music school trained cellist, we tend to focus on music written in the classical and romantic eras, that is after 1750. So when we refer to early music, it tends to refer to music before 1750, 1750 being the year of Johann Sebastian Bach's death. It's fantastic music, and it sounds even better when played, in a period-appropriate style on authentic instruments. All of us who play early music, particularly stringed instruments, have studied historical treatises which detail how to play the instruments, the stylistic concerns, accenting certain beats in the measure, exactly how to use your bow, those kinds of tricks. And I think that's what really creates that 18th century sound, is the playing techniques.
It's very rare to find a violin that has never been altered or modified, and this is an example of that. I do not know a lot about who the maker was of this violin, but it's an 18th century instrument, and it's built probably on a German model of violins because there was a maker named Steiner whose violins were very fat from top to bottom. They weren't as long and slim as some violins are. So it's very deep in the body. It has a nice big sound. It has its original neck and fingerboard, which is very exciting because there aren't very many instruments left from the 18th century that have their original neck and fingerboard. It's very interesting, and it's a lot of fun to play this violin. I enjoy playing it very much, and I try to not let anything happen to it.
This is an example of a very popular 18th century English harpsichord. It was built by Jacob Kirkman in the 1750s. He was probably one of the very most popular English harpsichord builders in the 18th century. And it's likely the style of instrument that would have been here in the 1700s. We know at least one of our royal governors did own a harpsichord, and likely several of the governors did. Really quite a treat, especially to perform music that we know we had copies of here in town in Williamsburg, for example. This is the kind of instrument that would likely have been used to perform that music. So it brings you a little bit closer to what the soundscape of the 1700s was.
The body shape of the cello has changed very little from its inception in the 16th century, but a lot of what we call the setup and the playing techniques have changed. For example, the making of the strings. You can see these yellow strings here are made out of animal intestine. We call them gut strings. Gut strings, they're organic. They're softer, they're more supple. They are a bit thicker than metal strings, but they're very gentle to the touch. Gut strings require a much more careful touch with the bow, so it's really taught me a lot more about bow control. You have to give the string very specific information. Exactly what point on the string are you touching it? Exactly how much weight are you using? Exactly how fast are you moving your bow? It will respond to very detailed, subtle information and let you know right away if it doesn't like what you're doing. So it's really made me learn much greater bow control.
Conservation at Colonial Williamsburg mostly stays behind the scenes. We do everything we can to keep the collections in really good shape by advising on the environment, by working carefully with our facilities team to do that, working carefully with our exhibits team to make sure that the lighting and the exhibit conditions are appropriate. We also do help in advising on space that things should be kept in so that we have them in the best possible environment to be able to facilitate using them and extending their life as long as possible.
What curators do, we really go deep and study the objects. We have to know everything about them, whether it's their provenance, where they came from, how were they used in the period, and then how did they culturally function? So how did we use these objects and what did they mean to the society at the time? So what I always start with is that paper file, because that is all the records we have on how the instrument came to Colonial Williamsburg. So I use it to understand who donated it or who did we purchase it from, was it from a music dealer? Was it from someone who just happened to have it in their house and didn't need it anymore? And then I go from there to see, okay, so how much conservation was done? Have we worked on it since it was acquired? How much damage was there? What did we have to alter or change for it to be used or played?
Instruments are often considered alive when they have their original use still a part of their capacity and a part of what they're doing. And many people don't even consider them a musical instrument anymore once they become an inanimate object. So having them animated and playing is actually a really important part of their lives and the way that we share them with the public.
I am the one who helps facilitate moves between buildings. We have several storage spaces. It can be a slightly stressful thing. We want to make sure the objects arrive at their destination safely. We want to make sure they're comfortable while they're traveling across the roads. So it can be a little bit daunting when you're strapping something into a vehicle, but it's great when you know it's going to be going on display or being seen by the public. So it just makes us take a little bit extra care when we're moving things.
We know that nothing lasts forever, and we don't kid ourselves that we're going to make it last forever, but we do try to make things last as long as we possibly can. So we're always engaging in a delicate dance of making sure that these things are available to the public and to scholars for study and for use and for learning new things, but also preserving them. So we do everything we can to make that exhibit and study and access available to people safely.
Every time I take it out of the case, I think to myself, don't drop it, don't drop it, don't drop it, don't drop it, don't scratch it, don't scratch it, don't bump it, don't bump it, don't bump it. So it's a tiny bit stressful. There is a sense of responsibility that comes with playing an instrument that is centuries old and does not belong to you. So yes, it is a different field. I think both Jenny and I feel a lot of responsibility to safeguard these instruments when they're under our care.
What's so special about the instruments from the collection series is that we're performing in an 18th century building, decorated and furnished like it would have been in the 18th century. We have evening lighting. We are in costume. The instruments are antiques. We are playing music from the period, using period performance practices. So it's a very immersive experience. It takes the guest back to the 18th century when it was current music. And that's a very special experience that they won't get anywhere else.
When I'm in the Governor's Palace playing, I like to think back to the references that we have to Governor Fauquier when he was governor, because he invited Thomas Jefferson and a number of gentlemen from the town to come weekly and play with him in an informal setting, I think, with just them. That was one of the things that's on history and on record as happening at that building. And that was one of the reasons why they started having music there to begin with and having a concert situation, because you wouldn't have regular concerts at the Governor's Palace in the 18th century. But it was a place that was home to music in a lot of different ways. And, you know, the governor's families, Dunmore, for example, he owned many instruments, his whole family played. So we're representing music in a concert situation, but we're also representing music as it was part of people's lives, people's everyday lives. People played instruments. If they wanted to hear music, they had to play it themselves.
The Palace Ballroom is a lovely place. I really enjoy playing there. The acoustics are wonderful. There's this candlelit, mysterious atmosphere to it with the low lighting, which I think is very evocative of time and place. So it adds that extra layer of specialness and goes even beyond just the special quality of that room and the players themselves.
We're really lucky here to be able to have them played in context in an actual historic site by people wearing the costumes, and so we can bring them to life even more than, I think, like a symphony orchestra where people might still be playing older instruments, but the context really adds to their value.
We want people to experience music and not just listen to it passively, but experience it. And I think that's what I love about this particular concert series.
There's a lot of other performing groups around the country that specialize in music from earlier centuries. Most of them don't have access to these historic spaces. Most of them don't play in period authentic costume.
With the instruments that we have access to, just knowing that they've survived for several centuries, and there's so much we can learn from them kind of as historical documents. There's not a lot of concert experience besides in a place like Colonial Williamsburg that are comparable.